Hello and welcome to the tutorial for Week 6, Project 2, Research Plan and Introduction. My name is Natalie Sweet and I'm joined by
Bridget Powell. As the final weeks of the class arrive, you will put your research together to form a response to the research questions that you have worked on this term. Historians use both primary and secondary sources to build support for their arguments. In Project 2, you will demonstrate what you have learned from the reading your selected sources, and you will make connections between those sources. You will also write the introduction for a theoretical research paper completed with a strong thesis statement that responds to the questions that you had developed this term. Please be mindful that we are building upon the research you had completed on the atomic bomb.
You may be wondering why you're not writing an entire paper. In History 100, the final project is a presentation of what you have learned. In order to have time to put this presentation together, you will complete a research plan and an introduction to maximize the time that you can spend on that project. The research plan and introduction template will help you do a few things. It will help you demonstrate that you understand how your sources fit together and can be used as evidence. It will help establish your ability to introduce research. And it will show that you have formulated your own conclusions in response to a research question.
You can download the research plan and introduction template from the Model 6 tile, scroll down to 6-2-1 and select the link called Research Plan and Introduction.
The multimedia presentation worksheet is divided into 3 parts. In Part 1, you will consider your secondary sources. Under Research Question, you will write your revised research question from the Topic Exploration worksheet. Eventually, the thesis statement that you write in your introduction will be a direct response to this question. You will then include citations for 2 of your primary sources. You can copy and paste these directly from the research kit. Beneath these citations, you will write 3 to 5 sentences that explain the historical context of the events surrounding the dropping of the atomic bomb in 1945. You will include the context from your secondary sources. Remember, you are not writing about the context of the times that these articles were written. That was a previous assignment. During this week, you are focusing on what was going on in the world of 1945. Add in-text citations to support your work. After you describe the historical context, in your next 3 to 5 sentences, describe how the historical context influenced your event. For example, if you chose to discuss the fact that Japan had bombed Pearl Harbor in 1941, you might discuss how this fact fueled hard feelings towards Japan in 1945.
In Part 2, you will consider your primary sources. As you did in Part 1, you will write out the citations for your primary sources. Again, pull these directly from your research kit. In the next section, you will relate your primary sources to your secondary sources. For example, do your primary sources support the conclusions found in your secondary sources? How or how not? Under Add to Understanding, explain how your primary sources affect the conclusion that you have reached in response to your research question.
For the final part of this assignment, you will craft an introduction for your theoretical paper. An introduction does a few different things. First, it provides background information about your historical event to capture the interest of your audience. Consider, how might you take what you wrote about the historical context of the event to hook the reader? Next, you will discuss how you will use the primary and secondary sources in your hypothetical research paper. When doing this, you will not call these sources out by their formal name or use the first person. Introductions and papers are written in the third person. Thus, you will discuss evidence from your primary and secondary sources that finally lead your reader to your thesis statement. The thesis statement is a direct, detailed sentence that will respond directly to your research question. In fact, the easiest way to create a thesis statement is to reword your research question. For example, if your research question was, how much did President Truman know about atomic energy before the atomic bomb was dropped in Hiroshima? Your thesis statement might take the form of, because President Truman knew about point 1, point 2, and point 3 concerning atomic energy, his decision to drop the bomb either was or was not justifiable.
If you have any questions, please contact your History 100 instructor or the History Learning community. Thank you for listening in and have a wonderful start planning for Project 2.